In this video, I'll show you how to solve the ALEKS problem called distinguishing extensive and intensive properties. Let's start with some definitions. An intensive property is a property that is independent of sample size, the size of the sample. So it doesn't matter how much you have of an object. An intensive property is one that does not change depending on the size of the object. So that could be something like the object's color, the object's temperature, the object's flavor, the smell of the object, etc. It does not depend on the size of the sample. An intensive property is a property that depends on the sample size. And this would be something like mass, or volume. The larger the sample is, the heavier it will be, and the greater its volume will be. In this problem, ALEKS is going to talk about a particular type of object. Mine is talking about apple cider bottles. And it's also going to let you know how the size of the sample could possibly vary. So for mine, specifically, it's talking about the potential variability here is different size bottles. I've seen another one where it's talking about different sized books, like longer versus shorter books, things like that. But it is going to be important that you quickly identify what the variability is in the sample size here. So for me, it's different sized bottles. So now it is going to ask me some questions about 3 different properties of apple cider, and it wants me to decide if the property is extensive or intensive. I flipped through a lot of versions of the problem. I didn't see any versions where the correct answer was can't decide. That doesn't mean that that's not a possibility. I don't think that it's very likely. So think really carefully before you click on can't decide. For some reason, I just want to start here down on the bottom. This one says the number of servings of apple cider in a bottle. Now keep in mind that the whole point here is that there are different sized bottles available to me. So the number of servings of apple cider in a bottle is absolutely going to depend on how large the bottle is. The larger bottle will have more servings in it. The smaller bottle will have less servings in it. So this is something that does depend on the size. In my case, the size of the bottle. And so that makes it an extensive property. Now the recommended serving size, like how much, what amount is a serving, the recommended serving size, that has nothing to do with the size of the bottle. So that's an intensive property. The serving size has to do with just the serving size. Doesn't matter how large or small the bottle is. The time that it takes to pour out 1 serving of apple cider, again, that does not depend on the size of the bottle. So I want to point out with this problem, the real tricky part, I don't think that this is too tricky. The real tricky part is that you need to identify what exactly is ALEKS thinking about when they're thinking about the sample size itself. So because for my problem, it could be really easy to get confused about is serving size my sample size? Because I could see how somebody would think that based on the way that these parts are worded. So that's why I suggest you really need to identify what the actual variable is in this problem, and then think about that variable as you're answering these questions.